when I go to the grocery store, purchase Canadian items or Mexican items, anything other than the United States.
Many of the responses, I don't want to travel to the United States. I don't want to give them my business. I don't want to spend my money there.
Did you know that America's oldest and closest friend is quietly turning its back on us? And do you believe, with its very unexpected withdrawal, the US economy is losing billions of dollars in just a few months? That's what's happening right now in Canada. Once the most reliable export market for US brands, Canada is now having enough. We see no protest, no headline, but the numbers speak a different story. Target lost 133 buildings and $2 billion. Walmart has already closed 9 stores in smaller Canadian towns. McDonald's has seen regional revenue in Quebec drop by over 19%. These brands have long stood as symbols of a powerful America, but if even these giants can no longer hold their ground, it gives us all the more reason to worry about what lies ahead. Why do Canadians choose to walk away? They aren't just rejecting products, but a version of America that no longer feels honest. Behind this quiet turn away lies deeper truths that these companies never wanted you to see. And if even our closest neighbor is turning away from the American brand, what does that say about what we've become? This is the Downturn Report, and today we'll expose the top 10 US retail chains near collapse by Canada's boycott with the reasons behind. Let's begin with the most shocking name. Number 1, Walmart.
It's the small ways we can protest as consumers. A lot of people are trying to express their anger, their feeling of betrayal by the United States.
How does the world's largest retailer begin to collapse without any smoking gun still earned over $600 billion last year, and now standing on a crumble foundation? The answer lies in something far more terrifying. Complete silence, not from anything strange or unfamiliar, but from the market that is long known for being its most loyal and supportive friend. Walmart is being forgotten with a calm, deliberate absence in Canada. And that should terrify everyone south of the border. There was a time when Walmart was dominant, with over 400 stores across Canada at its height. It wasn't just a retail giant, but a routine for millions of residents' lives. A community staple, a place where you could get whole weeks or even monthly groceries in just a single trip alone. Walmart provided everything, for everyone, at the cheapest prices ever. And yet, that empire of affordability is now falling apart. In just the past year, Walmart has quietly shut down more than 8 stores in Canada, mostly in small cities like St. John's, Newfoundland, and suburban areas outside Calgary. The number seems small, but it's the very early signs of something that will hurt deeply. An unexpected turn away. Cold store closed signs taped to locked glass doors and empty parking lots once filled with life's rhythm. This isn't a sudden collapse, but a slow, quiet retreat. And why does that happen? What did we do wrong?
If I can see it's from USA, I don't buy it.
The answer isn't found on a receipt. It's found in a growing chasm between what Walmart represents and what Canadians are willing to accept. More and more shoppers are walking away not because of prices, but because of principle. Walmart is increasingly seen as the face of an America that no longer listens. An America that expands, extracts, and then walks away. Canadian consumers now seek sustainability, transparency, and local integrity. But Walmart still sells the same pitch. Lowest price, highest scale. And for many, that pitch no longer lands. Even the promise of savings comes at a cost. Worker exploitation, environmental shortcuts, vanishing community investment. It's not what Canadians want in retail. This disconnect touches every corner of residents' life. A 67-year-old customer in a small Alberta town shared that he had shopped at Walmart faithfully for 20 years. Then one day, the store closed. No warning, no explanation. The town's only large supermarket is gone, leaving people with a great disappointment and the feeling of betrayal. A long life brand isn't supposed to just come, make money, and leave. If it doesn't care about the customer's needs, it will not be far away from the verge of extinction. The statement hit harder when Canadians across online forums now shared the same voice. I shop local, not Walmart. It's not a campaign. It's not corporate backlash. It's a quiet verdict, a shift in values. And in Canada, this verdict is now shaping market reality. And what's worse is that it's spreading fast now. In parts of New York, Ohio, and Kansas, Walmart locations are beginning to see the same symptoms. Declining foot traffic, rising complaints of impersonal service, and an increasing preference for smaller, more local alternatives. American shoppers are starting to feel what Canadians already know, that when a corporation loses touch with the community, it doesn't matter how cheap it is, people stop showing up. So if even the invincible Walmart can be quietly beaten up by one of our closest allies, what does that say about the future of American consumer identity? Number 2, Target.
No one should accept that the United States are not playing according to the trade rules that we have globally.
How does a brand with billions behind it enter a country with a spotlight and exit 2 years later in silence, leaving behind 133 empty buildings and a $2 billion wound? That's the story of Target in Canada. A story that began with promise and pride, and ended in disappointment so deep it still lingers like a bruise. To this day, Target Canada remains a phrase not of success, but of warning. When Target announced its grand expansion into Canada, it was hailed as the arrival of a better kind of American retail. Sleeker, trendier, more curated. Canadian media called it the arrival of the red bullseye. The company promised clean stores, exclusive products, and a step above Walmart in both quality and experience. But behind the branding, a quiet miscalculation was taking shape. But after just 2 years of opening, every one of the 133 Canadian Target stores was shut down. Not because of protest, not because of the scandal, but because Canadians simply stopped believing the hype. At its core, the collapse of Target in Canada wasn't just a logistical failure, but a cultural misfire. Products were missing from shelves, prices were higher than expected, stores felt strangely empty. And worst of all, it didn't feel Canadian. What Target delivered was not the smooth, affordable experience its American customers knew, but a disconnected, clumsy version that misunderstood the people it tried to serve. Local consumers felt overpromised and underwhelmed. They wanted value. Meanwhile, Target can only provide branding. They didn't want imports. They wanted to be understood.
Then we have products with the Canadian logo. Our warehouse shifted gears very quickly, looking for regional products from Canada and also from other countries outside the United States.
And in that cultural gap, Target fell painfully. A store that could have been a staple became a symbol of American arrogance. Too focused on image, too slow to adapt, and too blind to local realities. Canadians stopped coming. And once again, a major American brand vanished in silence. A former Target Canada store manager in Winnipeg recalled that the company never asked employees for feedback until the week they announced the closures. They thought the logo would be enough, she said. They never asked what our towns really needed. In suburban Toronto, a former customer said it more plainly. Target didn't fail because we hated it. It failed because it never even tried to understand us. And now, the story echoes ominously back into the US, in cities like Tulsa, Cleveland, and Sacramento. Target's American locations are showing signs of disconnect too. Complaints of empty shelves, confusing layouts, and a growing sense that the brand is listening more to marketing trends than to people. As inflation eats into the middle-class budget, even loyal shoppers are reconsidering, because when convenience feels scripted and connection feels fake, consumers don't complain. They walk away. So here's the hard pill to swallow. Brands don't fall because they lack customers. They fall when they no longer care enough to understand them. Stay with us, because the next one is an older, more traditional brand with the cut deeper and acre. Number 3, McDonald's.
Yeah, I'm definitely supporting Canada, not going to Costco, no Amazon.
One of the most powerful brands in the whole world that once planted its golden arches in over 100 countries is quietly collapsing right now. Not from scandal, not from shortage, but because today, its friendly neighbor eventually turned away in silence. That's what's happening to McDonald's in Canada. And if you think it's just a joke, you might want to think again. There was a time when McDonald's wasn't just part of Canadian life. It defined Canada's food culture, with over 1,400 restaurants at its peak. McDonald's was the reward after a long working day, the go-to for road trips, and millions of people count on it with a strong belief in the American brand. In 2010 alone, McDonald's Canada served over 3 million customers per day. By 2021, they were still investing heavily, opening new flagship locations. But the good old days just suddenly stopped, with heartbreaking reasons behind. In just the last year, the golden glow has started to dim. Financial reports show a sharp 4% revenue drop in Canada since mid-2023. In Quebec, the numbers are even worse, down nearly 19%. In major urban centers like Montreal and Vancouver, several long-standing stores have shuttered with no warning. Others have reduced hours and quietly cut staff. The media didn't announce it, as if it doesn't want to let us know about this quiet fall down. But ask a random Canadian and you will hear they talk about the drive-thrus are quieter. The booths stay empty. And just like that, a brand that once stood for American joy is now being left behind. The collapse isn't about pricing, nor is it about food quality. It's something deeper. A cultural fallout. Canadians, especially the younger generation, no longer see McDonald's as a treat. To them, it feels like a relic from another era. Too old, too bland, nothing impressive. They're proud to have hundreds of local choices, so depending on a foreign brand seems like a joke now, even though the long history of friendship with each other. But there's still a huge reason behind that. As McDonald's pushes automation, strips down human interaction, and expands globally, it loses what made it matter: warmth, familiarity, a sense of place. Gen Z Canadians, raised on climate awareness and health-conscious values, are asking questions McDonald's can't seem to answer. What's in this burger? Why is everything wrapped in plastic? Who are you trying to serve? And the silence they get in return is louder than any marketing jingle, because our brand fails to meet modern life's expectations now.
Support Canada with Team Canada, and right now that means avoiding American-made products.
A deeper resentment is also brewing. One not shouted in protests, but whispered in choices. The only thing McDonald's is chasing at that point is profit, said an old chef in Toronto. It feels like a visitor pretending to understand us. A father in Edmonton confessed he no longer brings his kids there, not because the food is bad, but because. In his words, "I don't want my son thinking this is what the standard feels like." The young generation deserve more. In Quebec City, a retired nurse shared, "We watched America send us their brands for decades. But it doesn't feel like friendship anymore. It feels like dominance. These quiet, painful rejections gradually feel like a moral verdict delivered not with banners, but with absence." And the silence isn't staying north of the border. Across small towns in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, McDonald's is starting to see eerily similar patterns. Locations still open, but noticeably emptier. More stores are switching to drive-thru only. More people passed by without stopping, because McDonald's is no longer as what it was in the memories of people. And if the Canadian exit is a warning, the early signs are that America might be next. After all, that leaves us with a haunting question. What happens to a brand when the people who once loved it decide they no longer recognize it? McDonald's isn't the only icon quietly losing its place in Canadian life. Another name once seen as too big to fail is now facing the same crisis, aisle by aisle. And this one will shock you. Number 4, CocaCola. What happens when even the most iconic bottle in American history starts gathering dust in a grocery store in downtown Toronto? A single can of Coca-Cola sits untouched. Bright red, perfectly chilled. But no hand reaches for it. The silence around that can is louder than any boycott. For generations, Coke wasn't just a drink, it was a symbol of summer, joy, family, and the American way. Now, in Canada, it's becoming something else, a forgotten relic of a happiness no longer shared. According to Coca-Cola's internal 2024 report, the brand has lost nearly 9% of its market share in Canada over the last 2 years. Among Gen Z and millennials, the very future of the consumer base, 62%, now say they no longer consider Coke their default beverage, not because the formula changed, but because something else did. Coke has become, to many, too sweet, too processed, too impersonal. In a world where buyers want meaning, transparency, and health-conscious choices, Coke stands awkwardly out of place. Its ads still sell nostalgia, but nostalgia alone can't compete with oat milk and kombucha. This isn't a flavor problem, it's a values problem. Canadian consumers aren't just rejecting ingredients, they're rejecting what Coke represents: unchecked industrial branding, plastic waste, and an emotional message that no longer feels authentic. The Coca-Cola that once made holiday commercials a cultural event now feels like it's speaking to a version of society that doesn't exist anymore. A 34-year-old teacher in Vancouver put it simply, "I used to drink Coke with my dad every Saturday. Now, I can't give it to my kids without guilt." And just like that, something sacred begins to slip. Because when a brand loses its emotional anchor, the drop-off is silent, but irreversible. In the US, the ripple is already forming. Sales are softening. Loyalty is wavering. If even Coca-Cola, the bottled anthem of American joy, can be quietly replaced, then we must ask what else from our shared memory is already fading. Number 5, Starbucks. What does it say when the most recognizable coffee chain in the world becomes a place where only tourists still walk in Vancouver's West End? A Starbucks that once buzzed with students, remote workers, and neighbors now sits eerily quiet save for the occasional visitor snapping photos of the mermaid logo. For Canadians, especially the younger generation, Starbucks isn't what it used to be. It's no longer a corner ritual, it's a corporate echo. Between 2022 and 2024, Starbucks quietly closed more than 130 stores across Canada, with the majority of those closures hitting residential neighborhoods. Recent data from Angus Reid reveals a telling shift: 56% of Canadians now consider Starbucks overpriced and out of touch. It's not that the coffee changed, it's the culture. Starbucks, once the global symbol of the 2000s aspirational lifestyle, no longer resonates. The handwritten names on cups, once seen as a charming gesture, are now called out as mass-produced intimacy. And the campaigns about fairness, sustainability, and diversity for many, they feel more like theater than action. The heart of the collapse lies in a growing moral and emotional rift. Canadians don't feel seen by Starbucks anymore. The brand still speaks in the language of urban chic and high-margin lifestyle. But Gen Z and millennials, increasingly focused on authenticity and community, are choosing local cafes like JJ Bean, DeMello, or pilot places where the barista actually knows your name, not just writes it. Starbucks tried to represent a global experience, but in doing so, it forgot to root itself locally. In Ontario and British Columbia alone, revenue has dropped 11% between 2024 and 2025. Over 40 stores in residential zones have closed. A 26-year-old student in Toronto said it plainly: "Starbucks feels like it was made for someone richer than me. Someone who doesn't need to think about the price of coffee." And across working-class America, a similar discomfort is spreading. Once a go-to for commuters, retirees, and students, Starbucks is increasingly seen as a brand that caters only to urban elites. Because when coffee becomes a symbol of distance, economic, emotional, cultural, it no longer offers comfort. It becomes cold, mechanical, forgettable. Number 6, Best Buy. What happens when a store full of the future becomes stuck in the past in downtown Toronto? A Best Buy glows with hundreds of screens, yet not a single customer walks in. A lone employee stands beside a wall of televisions, watching them loop quietly. This isn't just a slow day, it's a symbol of something bigger, a tech giant being quietly abandoned in real time. Since 2020, Best Buy has closed more than 30 stores across Canada. Retail electronics sales fell 11% in Q3 of 2024. The decline isn't due to lack of demand, it's due to shifting trust. Canadians now prefer Amazon's speed or the tailored service of local electronics shops. Best Buy, once seen as a trustworthy advisor in the tech world, is now viewed as slow, cold, and outdated. And behind the glass doors, that reputation is becoming reality. Many consumers also question the brand's stance on privacy and data sharing. Others find its after-sales service frustrating, with returns and warranties often routed through the US costing time, energy, and trust. Younger Canadians, in particular, see Best Buy as a remnant of a transactional, pre-digital retail era focused more on product displays than real connection. And in the US, longtime customers are noticing too. Older adults, once loyal to Best Buy for personal guidance, now find themselves facing automated kiosks and distant staff. The failure here isn't technology, it's the quiet erasure of human touch. Number 7. 7-Eleven. What does it mean when a store that never turned off its lights finally locks its doors for good on a quiet street corner in Montreal? A once 24/7 7-Eleven now sits dark, its neon sign removed, windows papered over, no protest, no farewell sale, just a quiet disappearance. Since 2022, more than 60 7-Eleven locations have closed across Canada, in cities like Ottawa and Halifax. The brand has vanished entirely, leaving behind an eerie absence in neighborhoods it once served around the clock. The decline of 7-Eleven in Canada isn't just about competition, it's about disconnection. Younger consumers increasingly seek healthier, locally sourced, more transparent options. But 7-Eleven's reputation remains tied to sugary snacks, mystery meat hot dogs, and shelf-stable meals packed in plastic. Its pricing strategy, often charging more in lower income areas, has also drawn sharp criticism. For Canadians, it no longer feels like convenience. It feels exploitative. Compounding that is a lack of local integration. Most stores don't carry regionally made products, and customer service has suffered as automation expands. In a landscape where Circle K and On the Run offer cleaner stores, lower prices, and more human interaction, 7-Eleven is being quietly replaced. And now, the same story is unfolding in the US for night shift workers, students, and long-haul drivers. Once the heart of 7-Eleven's base, the brand is losing its place. When fast food feels heartless, and open late no longer means welcome, people stop relying on you. Because when survival stops feeling human, even a 24-hour store can vanish without a single goodbye. Number 8. Walgreens. What happens when a place once trusted for care begins to feel like a vending machine in a quiet pharmacy in Quebec? An elderly woman waits, prescription in hand, but there's no pharmacist at the counter. No smile, no guidance, just a screen and the faint beep of a barcode scanner. Since 2023, Walgreens has closed over 50 locations across Canada, many in neighborhoods where access to healthcare is already fragile. The Canadian Medical Association now reports a steep drop in customer satisfaction. Driven by staff shortages and increasing automation, Walgreens' retreat is not just a logistical failure, it's emotional. For elderly customers, a pharmacy isn't just where they pick up pills. It's where they ask questions, hear reassurances, and feel seen. But as the brand prioritized cost-cutting, slashing staff and replacing interaction with machines, that human connection quietly disappeared. Deeper still is a wave of mistrust. Canadian media have echoed US. Controversies around Walgreens' pricing and transparency in rural border areas. Customers report higher than average prices and limited choices conditions that feel exploitative. Public health campaigns, once an opportunity for community care, have been replaced by glossy ads with little follow-through. Now, many seniors are turning to local pharmacies less high-tech, but far more present, a retired nurse in Ottawa said. At Walgreens, I was a transaction. At my new pharmacy, they ask how I'm doing. That shift says everything. Because when trust is lost in a place meant for healing, even the hum of a barcode scanner feels cold. Number 9. Taco Bell. What happens when the food meant to celebrate a culture ends up insulting it instead? In Vancouver, only a few Taco Bell locations remain open. Just steps away, real Mexican food trucks run by local families draw long lines day and night. The contrast is painful. What was once seen as fun and fast now feels empty and artificial. From 2020 to 2024, Taco Bell has closed over 40 locations in Canada, with sharp revenue drops in British Columbia and Ontario. And for many Canadians, especially those in Latin communities, it's not hard to see why. The deeper failure is cultural. As Mexican cuisine becomes more vibrant and respected across Canada thanks to immigration and culinary education, Taco Bell's industrial Tex-Mex style feels increasingly tone-deaf. The food lacks freshness, flavor, and most importantly, soul. A 2024 Canada Food Ethics survey ranked Taco Bell among the least authentic restaurant chains nationwide. In Quebec and Ontario, younger customers are choosing family-run taquerias, valuing real ingredients and cultural integrity over fast food mimicry. Latino Canadian communities have voiced sharp criticism. "They didn't bring our food," said one chef in Toronto. "They brought a mockery of it." That perception has damaged the brand's standing, with 21% revenue loss in Latin-heavy neighborhoods and 7 store closures in Ontario within a single year. And now, in the US, Taco Bell faces the same reckoning. When fast food no longer carries the flavor or respect of the culture it imitates, people turn away not because they're hungry, but because they deserve better. Because when food becomes imitation, you may fill the stomach but leave the soul starving. Number 10. Kraft Heinz. What if the meal that once brought families together quietly disappeared and no one seemed to miss it in a supermarket in Vancouver? Kraft products now sit at the edge of the shelf, replaced by local organic brands with simpler labels and shorter ingredients lists. Kraft Dinner and Heinz Ketchup, once staples in nearly every Canadian household, are vanishing not because people can't find them, but because they no longer want them. In Q1 of 2025, Kraft Heinz reported a 6.1% drop in Canadian revenue. A shift is underway. Thousands of households are now turning to cleaner, locally made alternatives. But this decline isn't just about food, it's about trust. After the Kraft Heinz merger in 2015, the company closed its plant in Ontario, the heart of Canada's tomato industry, eliminating thousands of jobs. For many Canadians, that decision felt like betrayal. A brand that once stood for comfort and family turned its back on the communities that built it. Younger generations in Canada increasingly see Kraft not as a symbol of home, but as an industrial relic. Its ingredient lists are long, its packaging outdated, and its story of mergers and mass production no longer fits with today's values. Products like Heinz Ketchup and Kraft Dinner are being pushed out of prime shelf space, replaced by brands that promise freshness, sustainability, and care. And in the US, the ripple is starting. As convenience loses its connection to safety, more Americans are asking, who are we feeding? And what are we giving up in return? Because when dinner loses the dish it was built around. What melts away isn't just cheese, it's memory. The logo's faded, but what vanished was belonging. If even our closest ally no longer sees itself in the reflection of American identity, what does that say about what we've become? Maybe it's not the products we're losing, but the promises they once carried. And now, the question lingers if Canada walks away in silence. Who will stand with us tomorrow?